Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you stories that matter to you from all across the world. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I am Joshua Barnes, live from the Firstpost studios. Let's begin with the top headlines. The Israeli military launches a deadly raid in southern Lebanon, targeting what it calls Hezbollah infrastructure. The attack prompts Lebanese president to order his army to respond, threatening to unravel the 2024 ceasefire. Nepal's interim Prime Minister Sushila Karki holds talks with political leaders for the first time since anti-corruption protests that killed 73 people and toppled the previous government, vowing to rebuild trust and deliver fair elections. Global demand for gold surged to a 25-year high between July and September as investors and central banks sought safety amid wars in Ukraine and Gaza, trade tensions and economic uncertainty driving prices to historic peaks before a recent correction. Ford recalls more than 200,000 vehicles in the United States after regulators found issues ranging from air bubbles in windshields to malfunctioning defrost systems, raising safety concerns across multiple models. And the International Olympic Committee says it has mutually ended its agreement with Saudi Arabia to host the inaugural eSports Olympics, breaking a 12-year hosting deal as both sides pursue separate esports plans. We begin with the latest on US-China relations. In South Korea today, US President Donald Trump met his Chinese president counterpart Xi Jinping for the first time in 6 years. The two leaders met on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit for over an hour and a half. Trump called the meeting a great success. He praised Xi Jinping as a tremendous leader of a very powerful country and said he would visit China in April.
Thank you all. It was a great success. It was a great honor. I mean, he's a tremendous leader of a very powerful country, and I give great respect to him, and we appreciate the fact that he came for this meeting.
Trump also announced a series of agreements aimed at cooling economic friction between the world's two biggest economies. Trump also said that the US will reduce fentanyl-related tariffs on China.
As you know, I put a 20% tariff on China because of the fentanyl coming in, which is it's a big tariff. And based on his statements today, I reduced it by 10%, so it's 10% instead of 20%, effective immediately.
The two sides also agreed to keep rare earth supplies flowing, materials vital for technology and defense industries. The agreement announced by the US includes a one-year agreement on rare earth trade with China. Beijing had recently tightened control over these critical minerals, triggering global supply chain worries. But post the Xi Jinping talks with Trump, China announced it will suspend those curbs for a year. Additionally, Trump also announced that China will purchase tremendous amounts of American soybeans and other farm products. Chinese leader Xi Jinping also too struck a cooperative tone. He said both Beijing and Washington had reached consensus on resolving major trade issues. Let's listen in.
The economic and trade teams of the two countries exchanged in-depth views on important economic and trade issues and reached a consensus on resolving them. Both teams should refine and finalize follow-up work as soon as possible, maintain and implement the consensus, and provide tangible results to set minds at ease about the economies of China, the United States, and the world.
And beyond trade, the two leaders discussed global security. Trump said both sides are working together to end the war in Ukraine. Notably, the issue of self-ruled island of Taiwan, which China claims as its own, did not feature in Trump-Xi talks. Trump is suggesting these talks are proof that Washington and Beijing can still do business. The world is watching to see whether this success translates into real geo-economic stability. Well, for more news on this, we have with us Jia Ian Chung, a political scientist and associate professor at the National University Singapore. Professor, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you for having me.
Let's first look at what the impact is going to be to global markets, given the chaos that we've had previously and the news that these tariffs are set to be reduced.
So the reduction in tariffs are ostensibly a good thing. However, whether they actually will be reduced or whether there will be a reversion after a period of reduction, that remains unknown. This is not the first time that the US and PRC have come together and ostensibly reached some understanding. And in the previous times, they unraveled because of claims of not one side or the other not acting in good faith, also unilateral decisions to shift and essentially renege. That could happen again. And I do note that this time around, President Trump said they were close to a deal. He didn't actually say that they were a deal, so there's still some moving parts. And, both President Trump and General Secretary Xi, they are known to change their minds. And that could well happen.
Absolutely, yes. Of course, further question marks still raised. But let's look at broader US-China relations now. There does seem to be a warming in relations, given the fact that Trump has also announced a potential visit to China in April. How do you see that moving forward?
So sure, it could be some sort of inflection point, but April for our purposes, in sort of contemporary politics, is almost as good as a lifetime away. Things could happen in the middle. The visit could be postponed or held off because of one side or the other. So, there's some good and positive signs of stabilization, but I think the sort of fundamental issues of US-PRC rivalry, of the mutual suspicion between the two sides, they weren't really talked about, which means to say that while we have some mutual understanding on immediate issues, some of the sort of bigger, obstacles to better US-PRC relations, they remain, and they could crop up and they could create surprises. One of those things that we've known from this past 10 months or so with President Trump in office is that, he brings a lot of surprises with him. So I would write that out.
Yes, and as we bring an end to our discussion, of course, talk over trying to end the war in Ukraine was spoken of. However, a clear area that was missed is the tensions with Taiwan. We know US is a major ally of President Lai Ching-te. We've also heard recently that China have said they're not ruling out using force to take Taiwan, a country and area that they see as their own. How do you think this moving forward? And could there be a further points of potential friction between the US and China over Taiwan?
So Taiwan not being on the agenda it's consistent with US policy about not negotiating over Taiwan. But the other thing is that it also means that a sort of major area of contention, is not talked about. So that could crop up. The US, for Taiwan is important to the US for several reasons, the semiconductors and all that. But also, if you look at Taiwan's geography, it sits on these really important sea lanes, air routes, and submarine cables that link the US allies of South Korea and Japan to Southeast Asia, to South Asia, to the Middle East. So Taiwan's position is, important to the US for sort of broader reasons. So too with the PRC, they see Taiwan as part of the first island chain, without control of which, they could be hemmed in. So these are outstanding issues. And I also do note that as the talk, just before the talks were going on, President Trump talked about the restarting of U.S. nuclear tests, right? And there was also yesterday the news being broken about the potential tests of rocket systems that the U.S. had based in the Philippines, potentially targeting, if there was a conflict, PRC assets in the South China Sea. So while there is a lot of positive talk and what looks like a forward movement, there are these areas of concern that are bubbling in the background that I think we would be remiss if we ignored.
Ian Chon, thank you ever so much for joining us and providing that insight.
Sure.
Shifting focus now to Russia. The country tested a second nuclear-capable system this week, just days after Donald Trump criticised Moscow's earlier missile test. President Vladimir Putin confirmed the latest launch as Ukraine peace talks remain stalled. Putin said Moscow had tested the Poseidon underwater nuclear-powered drone on Tuesday. It's like a large torpedo that can travel deep under the ocean for thousands of kilometres without being detected. Putin described Poseidon as an unmanned underwater weapon powered by a nuclear reactor and capable of long-range travel. He said Russia launched it from a submarine and successfully activated its nuclear power unit during the test. Putin said there is no way to intercept the system and that there is nothing like it.
For the first time, we managed not only to launch it from its carrier submarine using the booster engine, but also to activate its nuclear power unit, allowing the vehicle to operate for a certain period of time. This is a huge success.
Now, analysts say it could travel up to 10,000 kilometres, has a speed of 185 kilometres per hour, and can operate more than 1 kilometre deep. Arms experts say it could carry a warhead of up to 2 megatons. The system is believed to use a liquid metal-cooled nuclear reactor, which allows the engine to stay small but extremely powerful and operate longer underwater than traditional systems. Analysts have said it could trigger radioactive ocean waves that can cause massive coastal destruction. Putin said Poseidon's power exceeded Russia's Sarmat intercontinental missile and added the torpedo can reach any continent in the world.
It is 100 times smaller than the nuclear reactor on a submarine, yet the power output of Poseidon significantly exceeds that of even our most advanced intercontinental range missile, Sarmat. There is nothing like Sarmat in the world. We have not deployed it yet, but it will be deployed soon. However, Poseidon significantly surpasses Sarmat in power. In terms of speed and operating depth, there is nothing like this unmanned vehicle anywhere in the world. It's unlikely that anything similar will appear in the near future. And there is no way to intercept it.
Putin presented the weapon as part of a new nuclear arms race between Russia, the United States and China. Russia first announced Poseidon and the Burevestnik missile in 2018, calling them a response to US missile defense systems and NATO expansion. Days earlier, Russia also tested the Burevestnik's nuclear-powered cruise missile, which Putin said had unlimited range. Trump had said Putin ought to get the war ended instead of testing missiles, and said the launch was not appropriate. However, earlier today, Trump directed the US Department of War to start testing nuclear weapons on an equal basis with other countries. This is the first time in around 3 decades that American forces have been directed to test nuclear weapons. Putin has said Russia would not bow to Western pressure. The Super Torpedoes test is a testament of that statement. And now, with the US signalling their own tests, the nuclear landscape once again feels uncertain. Moving on to the US, where the Trump administration has announced another immigration policy change. This time, it affects thousands of foreign workers, including a large number of Indians. The Department of Homeland Security has issued a new interim rule. The notification ends the automatic extension of employment authorization documents, also known as EADs, for immigrant workers. Starting today, anyone applying to renew their EAD will no longer receive the 540-day automatic extension that was introduced under the Biden administration. The Trump administration says the move will strengthen vetting and screening processes to protect national security. but reports say it only makes life difficult for immigrants who need work authorization and American companies who rely on their expertise and diligence. Those affected include asylum seekers, green card applicants, and spouses of highly skilled foreign professionals working on H-1B visas. The rule also impacts individuals with temporary protected status and those applying under the Violence Against Women Act. According to the latest data, nearly 70% of all H-1B visa holders in the US are from India, forming the backbone of America's tech and research workforce. It's their spouses, often on dependent visas, who will no longer be eligible for automatic work authorization starting from today. When it comes to green cards, the US is home to over 12 million lawful permanent residents. In the 2024 fiscal year, Indians were the second largest group to receive green cards right after Mexico, underscoring just how deeply Indian professionals are tied to America's economic fabric. The US Immigration Agency reiterated that working in the US is a privilege, not a right. The Department of Homeland Security maintains that more frequent background checks will help deter fraud and detect individuals with potentially harmful intent. Each year, between 293,000 and 450,000 immigrants apply to renew their EADs. According to DHS filings, the US immigration processes around 49,000 such applications every single month. This policy marks another rollback of Biden-era measures aimed at protecting immigrants during processing delays. It follows a series of Trump administration actions, including a steep $100,000 fee for new H-1B visas. Meanwhile, in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis has ordered state universities to stop hiring foreign faculty on H-1B visas. DeSantis said Florida has enough qualified graduates of its own and questions why universities can't find what they need within the states or the country. He directed the Florida Board of Governors to pull the plug on H-1B hiring, insisting that American and Floridian residents should fill those roles. The White House calls the policy a national security safeguard, but fears persist that it could push thousands of skilled immigrants, many already vetted and tax-paying, into unemployment. As this rule takes effect on Thursday, all eyes on how the Trump administration manages the surge in renewal applications without leaving workers stranded. Now shifting focus to South Asia. Pakistan issued a strong warning to the Taliban authorities in Afghanistan after peace talks in Turkey failed. Defence Minister Khawaja Asif said Islamabad could strike deep into Afghanistan if militants targeted Pakistani territory. The statements came amid rising border clashes and a sharp exchange of threats between the two neighbours. Defence Minister Khawaja Asif said Pakistan would retaliate against any attack, warning it could, and I quote, push them back to the caves. He said the Afghan Taliban were involved in attacks on Pakistani soil. Khawaja Asif also said Pakistan had given peace a chance at the request of friendly countries, but claimed Afghan officials continued making venomous statements. He added Pakistan could go deep into Afghanistan if required.
Let me assure them that Pakistan does not require employing even a fraction of its full arsenal to completely obliterate the Taliban regime and push them back to the caves for hiding. If they wish so, the repeat of the scenes of their rout at Tora Bora, with their tails between the legs, would surely be a spectacle to watch for the people of the region.
In response, the Taliban authorities rejected Pakistan's allegations, saying Afghanistan did not allow its territory to be used against any country. They said it was beyond Kabul's authority to control Pakistan's own citizens. Afghan sources warned that any future Pakistani strike would be met with reciprocal action, saying if Afghan territory was targeted, Islamabad will be targeted. The war of words followed deadly border clashes earlier this month. Afghanistan said it launched operations in at least 5 border provinces after what it called a retaliatory attack to Pakistani airstrikes in Kabul, a claim Islamabad did not confirm nor deny. Both sides reported casualties as tensions escalated. India reiterated support for Afghanistan's territorial integrity and slammed Islamabad for believing it can carry out cross-border terrorism with impunity.
I reiterate what I had said in my last briefing. Pakistan is infuriated with Afghanistan exercising sovereignty over its own territories. Pakistan seems to think that it has the right to practice cross-border terrorism with impunity. Its neighbors find it unacceptable. India remains fully committed to the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence of Afghanistan.
Meanwhile, Iran helped to de-escalate the crisis. President Masoud Pezeshkian urged both countries to avoid escalation and pursue dialogue, saying Muslim nations must work together against shared threats. Tensions have remained high since October the 11th, when cross-border attacks left casualties on both sides. Pakistan has long accused the Taliban of allowing the Taliban Pakistan to operate from Afghan soil, which the Taliban denies. Meanwhile, the United Nations expressed concerns over the collapse of talks and said it hoped fighting would not renew. With both sides trading threats and mediation efforts stalling, peace remains off the table and tensions continue to rise along the border. That's all we have on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Until then, thank you for watching.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost.